Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webcast using behavioral science to power best fit recruiting and development featuring Rexall and sponsored by SuccessFinder. I'm joined today by Frank Monteleone, VP of Human Resources and Organizational Effectiveness at Rexall Pharmacy Group, and Lisa Hartley, Chief Marketing Officer at SuccessFinder. Frank has nearly 20 years of human resources experience and has been involved with supporting key priorities critical to the success of Rexall, including cultural transformation, M&A, strategic leadership talent reviews, and total rewards. Lisa has been on the software side of the house with marketing and strategy roles at PeopleSoft, Taleo, and SAP. Prior to her current role, she led strategy for SuccessFactors recruiting. With that, let me turn it over to Lisa.
Super. Thank you, Sherry, and thanks everyone for joining us today. So I thought I would start with sort of the what's going on now. In the U.S., many of you probably know on the call that the employment rate has declined to a super low 4.1% last month. And in Canada, it's the lowest rate it has been in the last 9 years. It is a job finders or buyers market. JobVite says that recruiters note the talent shortage is the biggest challenge facing them today. And staffing leaders like Paul McDonald from Robert Half cite that companies are having to accept applicants who may have only 70 to 75% of a job description qualification. However, he also notes they are still looking for individuals who have high potential or a good cultural fit. We're going to be talking a bit about that later. Frank, if you go to the next slide. Add to that, turnover is also on the upswing, as you can see from the slide. According to greenjobinterview.com, 75% is due to turnover. And once again, probably not a big surprise for folks on the call, they cite behavioral issues and poor organizational fit as the top 2 reasons that folks leave. We see, Frank, if you go to the next slide, that would be super. We see that the smart companies and organizations are really refocusing not so much on what's worked in the past, but new and really exciting ways to better identify, hire, and keep especially the high potential folks. Next slide. I think it might be relevant to bring up the great work done by Josh Burson at Burson Deloitte regarding this inflection point of value. We know the cost of losing an employee can range anywhere from tens of thousands of dollars to, I think most of the experts agree, it's around 2 times the employee's annual salary at the top end. And once hired, again, there's this idea of the return zone, the zone where employees pay back your investment in them. This diagram simply shows that over time, with the right talent practices, employees become more and more valuable. Our job as hiring managers and in HR is to attract the right people with the right fit to move them up this curve as rapidly and effectively as possible. And of course, it's obvious to us as employees as well, we're all somebody's employee. In our early days in a new job, we feel a bit unproductive. We search for ways to add more value, but in the right fit job environment, and if we have really good onboarding and coaching and training and teamwork, we rapidly will find our place and start to get in the groove and once again start to move up that curve. Our research and others show that if we are high performers, the return zone quadruples in value. So to keep you guys awake, we thought it would be good to ask a question at this point. So if we could go to the poll, Sherry, that would be super awesome. And the question is, does your company or organization do a good job at developing and keeping high performers? A, we do a great job. B, we do a good job. C, we could do better. Or D, we lose good folks all the time. Would love it if you folks would show us you're out there by, giving us the unvarnished truth here. Just a quick comment on this high performance turnover. This really is a metric that matters. And some firms like Microsoft claim that the contribution number of a high performer can be closer to 100x, which is amazing, especially in their development environment. So Sherry, are we able to show the results here? Wow, okay, so 3% of you do a fantastic job. 20 or so, 1 in 5 do a good job. 65% of you say you could do better, and 13% says we lose good people all the time. Well, again, you guys are probably not alone. It is tough in this environment where people feel like they've got lots of options, especially high performers, to go other places. From my experience, top firms, really the top of the top, keep turnover among the top 25% of the employee population to below 5%. So it really is a metric that matters. And again, if you believe that a high performer gives somewhere in the nature of 4 times or more back to the organization as they do what you're spending on them, it's really important to try to pay attention. So thanks, folks, for participating. Finding and certainly keeping high performers is infinitely easier if there is a clear job value proposition that assures the candidate that his or her natural behaviors align with those necessary to do the job. If this is off, turnover and the associated high cost, as we all know, is guaranteed. We had one client at SuccessFinder in the insurance business that was able to avoid about $25,000 in onboarding and training costs because they were able to identify certain gotcha behaviors. There was 3 or 4 gotcha behaviors that consistently guaranteed that new hires would leave within 6 months of joining. So this is not necessarily keeping a high performer. This is avoidance of a bad performer or a bad hire. And again, this is real payback because not only does it avoid cost, but it avoids tons of pain for all of you that have been in that situation. So at this point, I am going to turn things over to my friend and colleague, Frank Monteleone, for the Rexall story, which is super cool. And he's going to talk a bit about how they have handled some really smart talent practices around talent assessment and keeping high performers. Frank?
All right, thank you very much, Lisa. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'd like to start by giving you an overview in terms of the criteria and goals I was looking for when looking for a behavioral assessment tool. Essentially, I was looking for practices and tools that would help us with this concept of best fit staffing. I was especially interested in hiring better performers for critical roles in our head office and our store management teams. Of course, ultimately looking to increase retention in these key roles. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Rexall, we're a retail pharmacy chain. We have over 8,000 employees, and we operate 450 stores in 180 communities across Canada. Rexall is a wholly owned subsidiary of McKesson Corporation, and very recently, Rexall was named one of Canada's most trusted brands in health and pharmacy by BrandSpark in 2017. You can see from the photos on your screen that we don't have a cookie cutter store type. We operate many different types of store formats and sizes. We have traditional mall stores, we have the standalone box stores. We also have 2-level street front stores, and a fun fact, we also have some stores in converted historical landmarks, as you see there on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. So before we get started, I thought we would kick off this portion with a poll. Sherry, if you can help us out here, get the poll going. How important is behavior to your candidate selection process? Extremely important, important, or not important? So if you take a quick question, quick minute, and let's see what the results come out like.
What do you think, Sherry? About ready to close the poll? Pretty simple question on this one. Thanks.
Interesting results. We can see right now, though, Behavior is extremely important at a 60% split, and 40% say it's important. So pretty healthy indication that it is important, and only 1% say not important. So hopefully during today's conversation, we'll find out why this is a really important part of the selection process. So it feels important to outline our journey so everyone can understand where we've come from. Rexall did not have a formal behavioral assessment tool that we use for staffing. We were leveraging existing tools and ad hoc relationships that we had. However, none were aligned to our business needs. My journey with SuccessFinder started when I was looking to fill a director role within our head office. I was pleasantly surprised with how easy the report was to interpret, as well as how applicable and meaningful the conclusions were. Prior to SuccessFinder, hiring decisions were essentially being made on a gut feel and a conversation. SuccessFinder provides managers with the science to quantify the behaviors or attributes of an individual that they couldn't quite put their finger on during the selection process. So here's a quote that speaks to the essence of today's presentation. You can teach people a skill, but you can't teach a behavior on how to make the most of that skill. SuccessFinder brings behaviors to light and quantifies them against what's crucial to our organization. That's something that I said, and what we've seen here is our managers really like having insight on new hires' behaviors, as it provides insights on what's required on how to manage the individual for success and ensure we have the best fit for the role. In 2016, Rexall was sold to McKesson Corporation. We actually had a very long sale process. The transaction took 10.5 months to get approved by Canada's Competition Bureau. Once the transaction was completed, we began a journey to rebrand and reposition our employment offering. And one way we did this was to improve our company culture, as well as our employee and customer experiences. Part of that was to create an employer value proposition, or also known as an EVP, to create an effective foundation as part of our employment branding processes. The EVP took about 6 months to develop, and we just recently launched it. And what you're taking a look at is our main hashtag is "We're All In." A component of the EVP was to survey our employees and conduct a series of focus groups to capture our employee values. We then aligned the findings from the focus groups and surveys with our iCare value system. iCare is a set of principles that are practiced every day and touch every aspect of our business. And it was great to see the synergy in how closely our values align with the competencies and traits that are so well articulated in the SuccessFinder assessment. We summarize this as our Rexall DNA, which stands for driven, nimble, and accountable. What you're looking at on your screen right now is the Rexall DNA, and we use this basically as our fit test. And you'll see the various SuccessFinder competencies are categorized under aspects of our DNA. So just calling out a few of them, if you look under the driven category, you'll see embrace change, drive achievement. In the nimble category, you'll see seeks innovation, overcomes adversity. And then under accountable, you have builds consensus, establishes alliances. There's a few other ones that are mixed in, just worded a little differently. But essentially, we use this to consistently assess talent and describe the organization to foster desired culture and consistent employee experience. And this has become quite common with us now whenever we're looking to assess fit with the organization and regularly refer to our DNA.
Frank, just a quick question here before you go on to the poll. So was the employee value proposition well articulated prior to the relationship with McKesson, or was this whole thing a whole new talent management practice?
This was actually a whole new talent management practice. We went through a lot of change as an organization, and we actually didn't have an employee value proposition prior. So when the transaction completed with McKesson, it was something we embarked on, and we thought it was very important that it aligned with our values, and it was a huge piece of work, something that took quite a bit of time to adopt, but something that in the end turned out to be fantastic, and something that's grown organically throughout the organization, and we've been able to make a lot of connection points using SuccessFinder.
And one more question, just because I'm a marketing gal, I always think about this.
Sure.
Was there sort of a marketing program to publicize this in a pretty big way throughout the company? Once, I mean, you know, kind of once you got this Rexall DNA mantra, did you spend some cycles on that?
Yeah, we've actually had quite a few pieces to market it internally. We did our entire external website. So if you go to rexall.ca/careers, you'll actually see all of this actually posted on our website. So the entire company website was redone. We also took a very large social media campaign on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn to bring it to life as well. So, and we also, you know, have a lot of internal collateral, as well as we did a number of internal meetings within our organization to bring this forward. So it was simple and it caught on very easily, and it's been very well received throughout the company.
Super, super. Sorry to kind of ask a couple questions. I have a feeling that perhaps some of the folks on the call have either been through this process or going through this process. I think it can be quite a big task to do all the work around either the first EVP or a lot of times a redo, which I think a lot of companies are kind of in the middle of right now.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So let's take a look at another poll question. How do you currently measure behavior as you're making hiring and promotions decisions? Is it through interview observations, references or feedback, behavioral assessment tools, all of the above, or you really don't have a predictable way to understand behavior? So this should be an interesting mix, I think, here based on the types of selections we have. Be curious to see if references comes up, because references, I think, are a little passé in this day and age. I think maybe background checks are probably being used more frequently than reference checks, but we'll see when the poll is completed.
Well, and the audience can probably figure our evil, crafty plan with how important is behavior to you, which I think this audience has said that it's very important. So if it is, you know, what are the ways? And in fact, we just had Delara actually sent us a question, and I think, Delara, this pertains to your comments. It's not just about, yes, behavior is important, but okay, how do you actually measure it? That's the tough part.
Interesting question. All right, so let's see the poll results here. I think they're coming in. So interview observations was the biggest category, followed by all of the above, so combination of interviews, references, behavioral assessments. Interesting enough, 12% said we don't really have a predictable way to understand behavior. And as an organization, I think that's where Rexall was before we started using SuccessFinder, was we didn't measure behavior at all to understand how it fit within our staffing processes. So it's still quite a few organizations out there that are in that bucket as well. And not surprisingly, references are in the lower category, so lower response rate. So at Rexall, we do use SuccessFinder for both selection and succession purposes. I'll talk first about the selection aspect. We use SuccessFinder for management positions in our stores and in our head office. It's a mandatory step for people leaders, as well as some individual contributor roles. After our talent acquisition team has conducted an initial interview, the assessment is given, and all hiring managers are given the competency report for candidates that they meet with, so they have time to review that and see what's in there. And we also have updated all of our interview guides to probe for any lower preference competencies that a candidate will have. So our talent team spends quite a bit of time making sure that the interview guides speak to any lower preferences that need probing. And SuccessFinder does help quantify, and scientifically prove the gut feel that you may get through the interview process. In order to make sure that the process went smoothly within Rexall, we also have had our client-facing HR team certified on the competency process, and they've truly benefited from going through that and are quite enjoying using the tool as well. From a succession perspective or development perspective, we have incorporated SuccessFinder into our quarterly talent reviews. Top talent is identified through our talent assessment process, and anyone that's in that top talent category is given an employee development plan that is built using the results of SuccessFinder to ensure that we're playing to an employee's strengths and also to help develop any lower preferences that someone may have as well. And this is where a lot of the client-facing HR folks get involved as well, because we spend quite a bit of time debriefing our internal staff to make sure they understand their behavioral profile as well as their manager-director profile and ensuring that they are set up for success. So it's where it's come quite handy to have quite a few people trained within the process to ensure that it lives throughout the organization. So here's an example of best fit staffing at Rexall. SuccessFinder is the only assessment that provides a prediction of both career success and career satisfaction. And this is what makes the assessment unique. The assessment takes the results from candidates and measures it against high performers that are in role. We currently are using the standard SuccessFinder benchmarks that are available. I believe, Lisa, maybe you can chime in and speak to the custom benchmarks that could be available if a company wants to do that, but currently we are using the standard benchmarks within SuccessFinder, and there are over 500 of them. And we have found from our usage here that nearly 3/4 of the hires are in the average match category. You will see that about 20% are in the below match category, and that is predominantly we do hire below match folks, I would say, in essentially rural markets where it is harder to find people. Of course, using SuccessFinder, though, we're able to have insight into someone's lower preferences and also their higher preferences, so we can ensure the person is set up for success. So, kind of gives you an indication of how, from a match perspective, we have shaped out, and we do have over 7% in the above average match, and anyone who scores above average in SuccessFinder is typically considered quite good. So,
Frank, I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, especially since, again, you're acknowledging, kind of like Robert Half did, where maybe a candidate is not 100% fit because you're in a tough market or it's a tough job. So, do you sort of allow, especially for the folks, say in the 20% category, that are not aligned with a high performer in terms of the behavioral fit for that job? Do you do some coaching then for that person's hiring manager? Kind of like, hey, look, here's this person's behavioral DNA. Here's the stuff you might want to watch out for. I can't remember if you said that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we do. And our managers actually quite enjoy having that information available so they can understand someone's higher preferences or their lower preferences and ensure the person is set up for success. Because sometimes you will hire someone who's a below average match for a variety of different business reasons. And ideally, you would want everyone to be in at least an average match category, but sometimes circumstances or geography, are what they are and play into these decisions. So we definitely do build plans around that when we do hire someone who's a below average match and work with them to ensure their success. And the managers love having it, to the point that all managers now actually, it's become quite funny because at first, people were a little hesitant because an extra step in the hiring process would take an extra day or so to get the results back. But now we have a lot of managers that are quite reluctant to make hiring decisions without having the SuccessFinder assessment done for this very reason. So.
Super. And then one other comment that I would make, Frank, since you opened up the question, is about benchmarks. So, the way it works is that once you've taken the assessment, we then line your behavioral sort of DNA against over, as Frank said, 500 benchmarks of high performers in the role, validated benchmarks. And I believe, Frank, that you said most of the benchmarks that you're using are, benchmarks that we provided for you, sort of the library of benchmarks. We also, and I'll give you an example, we're doing a benchmark for the Montreal Fire Department, and that is a custom benchmark that we're building for them. So we're using some customized features around what makes a great Montreal fireman. We're also doing some benchmarks, some custom benchmarks for the National Hockey League for Canada as well. So again, really interesting research around what makes a really good professional athlete. So these would just be some examples of some areas where we've done customized benchmarks because of the nuance of what we're being asked to do.
Lisa, what would a company have to provide in order to make a custom benchmark? If they wanted one for their organization specifically, what information would a company have to give SuccessFinder in order to make that happen?
Yeah, it's a series, and I think I'm not part of the research team, but I think it's typically anywhere between, 4 weeks and 12 weeks where we're actually working with a company and we're looking at high performers within that company and we're doing a series of tests and performance tests around that. So that, and I guess probably what happens mostly when we're doing custom benchmarks, it has to do with a cultural fit. So like we are working with a large retailer and they really feel like they have some cultural stuff that is very unique to their organization. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to sort of statistically quantify the cultural piece and the high performers within that organization, and then tweaking the particular job function, which in many cases is a high value role, like retail store manager or like something in, we've done some with pharmaceutical sales, where again it's high performers, usually often high income individuals, and then there is something about that organization where they feel like an off-the-shelf benchmark just isn't going to cut it. And I mean, we've been really successful at it, and there is an investment of time, but I think the result has proven to be pretty good.
Lisa, I know one thing I get asked here quite often about the benchmarks are how often are they updated? Is the data current? And
Yeah.
I know maybe you want to share with everyone on the phone about that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So we update it all the time because we are working with companies, either reinforce giving us data, based on benchmarks that we're doing again and again and again, or based on a lot of these custom benchmarks. We also have things we call synthetic benchmarks, where we're actually adding data to an existing job description benchmark, but it's changing all the time, again, because our database continues to grow over time.
Excellent. Okay. So in terms of measuring success with the tool, we still are in our early days with SuccessFinder. We're still kind of within our first year as an organization, just over a year actually with using the tool. And the early signs are extremely encouraging since it's been implemented. We've seen a drop in turnover at our support center, or also known as our head office, of about 55%. And we've seen a drop within our store management teams of about 44% in the first year as well. We've also seen a drop in employees that have taken, we've seen only 6% of employees that have taken SuccessFinder have left Rexall, or about a 1/3 drop. So people that have completed the assessment that for whatever reason quit the organization have moved on, which is a pretty small statistic overall. So early signs are very encouraging, and I think the numbers here speak for themselves. So what have we seen happen since we've implemented SuccessFinder? We're seeing more informed hiring decisions, resulting in better hires. We're seeing a shift towards best fit staffing for jobs based on behaviors. And SuccessFinder is the only tool that provides a prediction for both career success and career satisfaction. We've also seen an organic growth in the tool throughout the organization. Initially, when we first started with SuccessFinder, I was the only one certified in competencies, and I became extremely busy because it caught on so well that everyone wanted an assessment done that I got my entire client-facing HR team certified, and then I went on and became certified in the full program. Come to the point here where managers are extremely reluctant to make any hiring decisions without leveraging SuccessFinder. And kind of what Lisa and I were speaking about earlier, we do have an awareness of individuals' behavioral preferences to help ensure their success within the organization. So our journey here, if I kind of go from left to right, just kind of speaking about what we've gone through, it wasn't too long ago that our decisions were being made through gut feels and through conversations. We didn't have any science behind why we were making our hire or who we would think would be a good candidate. So essentially, in some cases, people were being hired for roles that they were not fit or suited for. As an organization, we've gone through a lot of different changing business needs. We went from an organization that was privately owned to being a subsidiary of a very large publicly traded organization. And we're operating in a landscape where retail pharmacy is extremely competitive and constantly subject to a lot of changes. So we had a lot of turnover happening through lack of effective hiring. And then we stumbled across SuccessFinder, and we adopted the program, and we saw its organic growth through the company. And then you kind of see where it says us, that's where we are today. And we're able to accurately identify top talent and have a prediction of career success and career satisfaction by using the tool. We're leading towards high-performing employees, building stronger teams, which leads to ultimately increased job satisfaction and decreased turnover, as I see through the stats that we put together. Lisa, maybe I'll turn it over to you to speak about the solutions here.
Super. Thanks, Frank. Yeah, guys, so just a quick, there was a couple of questions here about, SuccessFinder, which we can get to as we open the Q&A. But really insightful, Frank, and it's always great to hear a case study about how a particular tool is being used. I just wanted to sort of, if you haven't heard of SuccessFinder, don't feel bad. We're a relatively new player. We just launched the company, the cloud part of the company, about a year ago. But we have almost 4 decades of research and validation behind our products. You may have heard of Dr. Larry Cash. He was the founder, and once again, Larry is sort of a towering figure in the assessments market. But we just really brought our assessment tool to the cloud, in a relatively short amount of time, about 12 months ago. We work at all levels of an organization, sort of from the very bottom, entry-level identification of talent, selection, onboarding, development, and career management, along with internal mobility, all the way up to the top. We do a lot of work with mid-level assessment and development of teams. We are actually announcing a brand new piece of research that we've been working on for 2 years called the Ladder of Leadership, which is based on first, second, and executive level leadership behaviors. Really, really interesting stuff, and we work with a lot of management teams around that. And then finally, quite a bit of work around executive assessment. We worked with a very large consulting firm. Recently, they had a number of great candidates for a CIO a selection process, and we were looking and helping them make some decisions based on, when you think about who you're hiring, especially for high-value positions, you're looking at people's skills, you're looking at experience, and those two things, especially for professionals who have some tenure, it's pretty easy to measure those things. What is much harder to measure, and I'm sure, Frank, you've reiterated this, is the behavior, the DNA that everyone has and doesn't actually change that often. So that's what we're in the business of measuring. So that is a bit about SuccessFinder. If you'll go, I think, Frank, to our last slide, we've got lots of information about our company and our products on the website. We also have a best fit staffing research page that can provide you a lot more information. We've got more information on Rexall from a case study. We've got some research out there on turnover and retention. You've got me and Frank, our personal emails here right on the slide, as well as some, I think, great information if you have some particular questions about the science of SuccessFinder. A couple of questions that can come in. I'd like to tee this one up for you, if you don't mind, Frank, and this is from Mel, and it's back to your employee value proposition, and how did you align the DNA with those values? Was there any particular, I think you have the slide that showed you basically took the SuccessFinder competencies and then you align them with really that employee value prop that was really specific to Rexall. Do you want to say any more about that?
Yeah, we actually had an external firm help us, so I hired a firm to come in-house and facilitate the whole process. And it was through the focus groups and the surveys that they did with our staff that a lot of different types of themes and trends were coming through. The firm that I hired was aware we were using SuccessFinder as our behavioral assessment tool, and it was very interesting to see that the definitions that SuccessFinder uses for the various competencies and what we were hearing back from our staff were very closely aligned, and it ultimately tied back to our I-Care value system. So we're able to actually use a very similar phrasing to quantify what it's like to work at Rexall or life at Rexall. So it was actually very neat to see that it was pretty much an organic process that we heard from all levels within our companies. We did cross-functional focus groups across all sections, from our hourly employees all the way up to our executives. So it was pretty neat to see it all come together, to be quite honest.
Super. Thanks, Frank. Brittany has a question for you. How do you keep people from answering the assessment based on what you think or what they think you want to hear? So how do you keep people from gaming the system?
That's actually an excellent question. The tool itself is very sensitive, has a number of different algorithms built into it. And if someone is trying to game the system, it actually flags. When you get the results back, the certified practitioner, so I would qualify for one of those, it actually would flag. And there's a couple of flags that go up to indicate that the person has tried to game or give a response that's more socially desirable. And in that case, you have a conversation with the person and ask them. What I've done, to my experience, happened to me a couple of times. They've gone back to the individual and asked them about what, their results and how they found the test, and politely suggest that they redo it because it'd be something to indicate that they may have tried to overthink the responses. So the test is very sensitive. It does flag if that happens. And I've seen from my own experience, when someone does go back and do it, they come back below that social desirability flag that goes up, and it's okay. But the test does have very sensitive algorithms built in to catch that.
Great answer. I bet you went to training. Hey, another question for you from Jeff. Is this tool similar at all to Myers-Briggs personality assessment?
Myers-Briggs gives you an indication more, and I haven't done Myers-Briggs in years, so I'm not totally up to date on it. I remember I did it myself maybe 10 plus years ago, and I forget what my 4-letter code was, but SuccessFinder gives you a much deeper level of response. Gives you predictability rate of career success and career satisfaction, a lot more info than you would get from Myers-Briggs. I remember when I did mine, I was, I think, slightly extroverted back then. I don't know the idea what it is now, but SuccessFinder does provide a lot more information at a much more deeper level to give introspection to the candidate that, from what I recall, Myers-Briggs would do. So maybe you would know more if you've done Myers-Briggs recently.
Oh, yeah. Years, no, we get this question all the time. And as a hiring manager, I have done Myers-Briggs with my team. Which is super fun. I've also done some Buckingham tools as well. I guess the big difference, if you think about it, Myers-Briggs is really 4 things, right? So the difference between, say, a Myers-Briggs assessment and SuccessFinder is that we're actually looking at 85 different traits. So if you are looking at 4 different traits with Myers-Briggs being on or off, extrovert or introvert, intuitive or sensing, that kind of thing. The DNA that we're looking at, you can think of it 85 different buttons. And Dr. Cash likes to show everyone's DNA almost like a periodic table. And so you really have this idea of almost a chemistry set. And so it's just lots deeper and lots more robust in terms of the kind of picture that you get around an individual, which for me makes a lot of sense because I think people are very complicated and complex, and having a very nuanced tool to be able to look at them very deeply is what we're trying to do. So Jeff, thanks so much for the question.
Well, it's also a great question in the sense that, to remember the questions themselves. I don't know about the Myers-Briggs question because it's been a while since I did it, but SuccessFinder's assessment is 340 questions, which are forced choice. So essentially, you're picking between option A and option B, and you're trying to pick between sometimes two equally desirable or two equally undesirable preferences, both of which give you the outcome of showing someone's natural behavior profile or their natural behavior tendencies. So it's a very interesting assessment tool, that's for sure.
Well,
SuccessFinder, that is.
And also, Frank, to your point about social desirability, because it is this ipsative test, which is yes or no, it's not on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5. Exactly, and that is how we test against social desirability. And you, as the assessment provider, as the expert, you will have a social desirability score for anyone who has taken the test. And we have and do occasionally throw out tests because we do feel like people are trying to answer the questions based on exactly what they think you want to hear, and we're really good at being able to flag that. What question from Joanne? Frank, did you have to allocate new budget funds to support adding this tool to the overall hiring toolbox?
That's an excellent question. So this all kind of came about. So Joanne, thank you for the question. Extra is, yes, I actually didn't have any budget allocated. I actually had to make the case for this and meet with our CFO because this came up kind of mid-fiscal year, and go make the case for her and kind of present where we are from an organizational perspective and the value that the SuccessFinder tool would add. And always trying to quantify these types of things for a CFO. For those of you that have been in a role similar to mine, would know those conversations are always interesting. So long story short, I was able to make the case effectively and able to get the funds to prove the case, and it was very successful. So then for the following fiscal year, I was able to budget even more in order to enhance the SuccessFinder program. So it was quite the journey unto itself, just getting the funds secured. So.
Super.
Very well worth the investment, though, I will say.
Well, good. I hope so.
The turnover numbers are speaking for themselves. The turnover numbers are speaking for themselves. So it's, yeah, it was a very good conversation. Let's put it that way.
Great. Thanks, Frank. Trina asked, Frank, you use this tool, you said in an earlier slide, you use this as an objective data point in making hiring decisions. How do you keep weeding out applicants or candidates in a protected class? So I guess, have you had to use this objectively, and has anyone, I guess, ever said, no, this is not an objective test, I'm in a protective class, and so I'm going to object to that?
Haven't had anything like that happen yet, but from what I understand, the way the test is designed, it does eliminate any sort of bias to ensure that it does, it does deal with any sort of protected classes. I don't know the exact term, Lisa, but it's something a little more technical. But I haven't had that type of situation come up yet, to be quite candid.
Yeah, and Trina, if you want, I'm sure our team, I don't know the answer to that either right off the bat, but I am sure this comes up a ton. In fact, I'm thinking a client like New Brunswick Power, which is a large power company, and who is one of our oldest clients. Gaten Thomas is the CEO, and he loves our test. They use it for all hiring and promotions. My sense is that they probably have some experience with that. So if you want to email me, I'm happy to either get you in touch with perhaps another client, or our research team, our IO Psych team probably has that question all the time. I have got another question here from Mateus that says, how do we use SuccessFinder for educational clients, specifically around evaluating teachers? I actually don't know that, Mateus, but once again, I'm happy to get back to you on that. We do quite a bit of work with colleges. In particular, I know McGill uses us for all of their MBA students. You don't graduate from that university without having the ability to have your own SuccessFinder profile. We're also using it with a cohort of MBA students around a brand new product that we're coming out with early next year called Self-Explore, and it is the first time that we've actually launched the test without any assessment intervention other than it's essentially you get the test and you get enough documentation with the test that you're able to not actually engage with a consultant to evaluate yourself. So that's super exciting for us. Hopefully that answers your question there. And then another question said, hey, is SuccessFinder part of SuccessFactors? That is a great question and good for me because I was with SuccessFactors for, gosh, almost 6 years. A couple of years with SuccessFactors, stayed on the SuccessFactors side when SAP bought us. But no, SuccessFinder is not part of SuccessFactors. I led the recruiting strategy team, and what we did is we had a lot of assessment partners. SuccessFinder, we went with that name way back in January because Pathfinder, which is what the company was named before, was not available in the U.S. And we wanted to, go after the U.S. market in a very large way. And so we branded the company as SuccessFinder. So that is the background there. We would love to work with SuccessFactors clients. SuccessFactors is agnostic as it relates to assessment vendors or partners. So we very much hope that we will be have opportunities to work with SAP and Oracle and Workday and a lot of the folks that are out there providing core talent management cloud processes. I'm curious, Frank, who do you use as your core HR vendor?
We actually don't really have a formal HRIS system right now. We will be moving towards Workday in 2018 because that's what McKesson is using. So we're actually quite excited about that, but we actually don't have a fully integrated HCM system right now. So more to come on that in 2018. Super.
And then a question again from another Jeff. Does SuccessFinder have benchmarks specific to law firms?
Yeah, there are actually quite a few legal benchmarks in there.
Yeah, absolutely. We do. Again, if you think of high value, jobs, we've got a lot of benchmark information around those, and of course, law being a lot of high value.
I've actually had to use it because we have, of course, internal legal teams here within the organization. We've hired a VP legal recently, and I used the assessment and those legal benchmarks for that role. So there actually are quite a few legal benchmarks, ranging all the way from law clerk, paralegal, to many different types of lawyers, from corporate lawyers, general counsels, IT lawyers, you name it. I think there's a benchmark for it. The legal benchmarks are quite extensive, and I've used them myself.
Another question from Tracy. Hold on. Oh, shoot, I just lost it. Give me a minute. Here we go. Is the interviewing piece similar to targeted selection interviewing? As far as the certification process, how long did it take to implement, and how receptive were your managers during the initial process?
So manager reception during the initial process, I'm not going to lie, there was a little bit of resistance because everyone always wants their vacancy filled yesterday, and at first everyone's like, oh, we're adding an extra day or two to the process, why would you do such a thing? But as we started rolling the process out and people saw the value in the reporting and how it helped them hire the best candidate at the end of the day, we started to see it through the decreased turnover almost right off the bat. People became fine with the extra day or two step that it took to put people through the process. The certification process itself, I've gone through both the competency certification as well as the full certification. I think the question was for duration of the processes, Lisa, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Competency one was pretty straightforward. That takes a day of in-class instruction by a SuccessFinder trained practitioner, and then after you have a couple of supervisions. where you're supervised by a SuccessFinder supervisor who will assist you. That is a much more easy and direct route. The full certification is much more intensive. There's a week-long class component. There's pre-work to it. Then you have 6 supervised supervisions with debriefs for each one, as well as an exam component. And I think there were 8 exams, if I remember correctly. I did mine, I'll start to finish in about 12 to 13 weeks. But I mean, you have 1 year to complete it from the time you do the in-class component. So you can kind of do it at your own pace.
Yeah, I would just add to that, you know, we have some great partners like Optimum Talent in Canada that, you know, works with many organizations to come in and do any of those steps along the pyramid, as I mentioned earlier. McKesson, as an example, is using us for through Optimum Talent for a lot of executive development and team development work. But we also have many companies who, you know, they want to be self-certified. And Frank is a great example. So, you know, as opposed to just having either SuccessFinder or a partner of SuccessFinder come in and do the work, they actually want to do the work themselves, and they want to be certified around it. So he mentioned the 2 levels of certification. You can either be certified at the competency level, which we've got 26 competencies. That is a day-long certification process, or the trait level, and that is 85 different traits. That is the whole kit and caboodle. That is a little more extensive, as he mentioned. It's about a week of in-class training. We've got an e-learning module that you do a lot of self-paced stuff at the beginning, and then there's a series of exams. But once you got it, you have this amazingly robust tool, and companies are using it at all levels, whether it be the hiring, especially high-value individuals, but also, you know, for succession development, executive development. And there's just, it's sort of like open up the candy jar. You just get to use it for all sorts of really interesting things. And what you do is you have the ability, again, to not only look at skills and experience, but that secret sauce, which is behavior. And that becomes a really, I think, an amazing tool to up-level talent management processes in a really big way. So you guys, that is the end of our core presentation, as well as, I believe, all of the questions that have been submitted. Just as a quick step, Sherry, did you get any others, or are we kind of at the end of the list?
No, I think you got them all, Lisa.
Super. Frank, any parting comments before we let everyone go back to their days?
No, thank you very much, though. I do appreciate the opportunity to share the Rexall story, and thoroughly enjoyed my time this morning. Thank you very much.
I'll reiterate that, folks. We just had a great time. It's a super tool. Rexall's doing amazing work, and Frank is my pal, and we have a great time together, and we're so pleased to have been able to present this material to you. Sherry, thanks so much.
All right, Lisa and Frank, I want to thank you both for the collaborative effort on this very informative webcast today. Much appreciated. So thank you very much. Now, just a few reminders for the attendees. If you would like to view this webcast again, the archive recording and slides will be available for up to 7 days for our free members and without restrictions for those with the certification memberships or our HR Genius members. All webcast credits are stored in your HR.com account, and do watch for your HR.com email to arrive within 2 business days. It will also contain the certification credit information. Your feedback is very important to us. Please do take a couple of moments to fill out the exit survey that will appear on your screen once the webcast has ended. This does conclude our webcast. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.